Hey everybody, welcome. It is just after 7 o'clock, which means that it's time for the Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Your host, as always, Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for tuning in as we come to you from some new digs. Just stay tuned over the next number of weeks. We've got a lot in store for you. As I told you, lots of changes coming, but nonetheless, same great show we have in store for you. A lot of familiar faces that are going to be on the panel today, and certainly no shortage of topics. And so, speaking of topics, let's go ahead and go into those right now. First of all, we're going to go ahead and talk about a friend we haven't talked about in a long time, the one and only President Obama and his birthday bash, and all the controversy that caused.
Just yesterday. Literally.
That's right. We're also going to be talking about the governor, our new friend, in Governor Cuomo and the issues he's having, and of course, how the tide has quickly turned on him. We're going to be talking about the mask mandates, not only here in Florida, but Hillsborough County and nationwide. We'll talk about how that situation is going. And what's the last one? I forgot the last one. Let's see. In general, we're talking about
Cuomo?
Democrat hypocrisy, when it comes to COVID and the COVID restrictions. And so that Obama birthday bash kind of falls into that category there. So with that being said, those are our topics for tonight. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the audio version of our podcast over at the Google, all the tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. Now joining me on the big table for today's show, the one and only Joe Wicker. How you doing, sir?
What's up?
Joe, responsible for today's digs, and we're trying it on, seeing how it fits.
Seeing how it's going to work.
That's right. So far, so good.
Gotta make it home.
That's right.
We're still moving in.
And over to the far right is the far right Anibal David Cabrera.
I try to fit that motif.
Although I don't think you're right of Joe. Joe's quite a conservative.
If we were doing it ideologically, I would be off camera. I'd be to my right, your left, off camera.
That's right. Yeah. So one of the things that the Democrats have been consistent about, if anything, has been their hypocrisy when it comes to the coronavirus and COVID. By the way, for those of you watching, now's the time where you want to like, comment, share the show as we get into our first topic. And the reason we're bringing this back up is because just in the last 2-3 weeks, we've seen ridiculous examples of liberal hypocrisy when it comes to the handling of the coronavirus. They've obviously been sounding the alarm since day one that we must shut down and shelter ourselves as if we were about to be invaded by some foreign force, and yet in the past few weeks we had the mayor of Chicago, who famously has turned everything into a racial problem.
Right.
Basically,
or it's Indiana's fault.
Yeah, that's right.
Or it's like Indiana's fault.
Well, and she was saying, well, let's implement some mandates. Let's kind of do the lockdown thing, because I think they feel like they got a surge coming.
Right.
And somebody reminded her, hey, Mayor, we kind of got this big music festival coming. It's called Lollapalooza. It's kind of a big deal. Do you mind if we just kind of hold off on that? And she's like, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's have hundreds of thousands of people in a major music festival over a number of days gather
I wonder
in
if she
close
knows
proximity.
what Lollapalooza is, because Lollapalooza is at least 20 years old, right?
She knows.
She knows. Well, and again, these are the people who I'm sure she was the first to get the phone call from and saying, hey, we've spent a lot of money to put this together, and there's a lot of, and again, they're all
in contract, so they would get sued if they violated.
Exactly.
They got to pay they'd have to pay all that.
Yeah, and then the city loses out on all they've already been hit hard economically, by COVID. This was kind of a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel that would obviously, bring in a lot of tourism revenue. So she's like, yeah, sure, let's kind of go ahead and let's kind of hold off on all these mandates, and we'll just put them in once you guys are done with this little music festival you guys are putting on.
There's no rhyme or reason to any of it.
No. While Anibal does his taxes, we can also point out
There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's crazy.
Jonathan, that's very close, by the way. Commentary from you, sir.
I just feel like
Yeah.
Chicago is one of those. I feel like I'm not allowed in Chicago or something. Like I feel like
Probably not.
I feel like if I showed up,
we'd
they'd
probably
be
be
like,
red flagged.
yeah. I feel like for some reason they would know I was there.
Yeah.
We don't want your kind here. Like I just feel like I wouldn't fit in or something because it's such a crazy place. I mean, beautiful city, amazing. Have been there before. Really cool place, really cool city. And then their politics.
Other than
seems
from
so
Eminem, I've
crazy.
always heard good things.
Yeah.
It's
It's just crazy because that mayor, I mean, literally, whether it's guns, COVID.
Oh wait, that's Detroit. Sorry.
Yeah. Whether
Same
it's
thing.
whether it's guns, COVID, immigration, like you name it, she literally blames Illinois, blames Indiana, and says
Yeah.
it's coming over here.
Right.
And it's like, lady, no.
Okay, now let's use that logic with the southern border and see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this
Oh right. No. Nobody wants to talk about that.
right.
So you opened up talking about hypocrisy, and so this is the problem. Like, I was talking with somebody, a clinical page that I'm on. I was talking with these people, and they were like, "Why aren't people just listening to us?" And I'm like, "Well, you got to understand when policymakers are telling us that we need to be vaccinated in order to go to a restaurant in our community, okay, but then." 1 million illegal immigrants are going to come across the board
Right.
over the course of 12
Untested.
months. And they're not tested, and we know many of them. We know there are infections that occur
Right.
in those facilities where they're holding them. You're basically vaccine shaming a bunch of ordinary Americans that have been dealing with this for over a year. But you're at the same time allowing millions of people just to flood across the border with there's infectious disease coming across the border.
Right.
We know that happens.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID, we know that happens because they come from locations that still struggle with infectious disease that we don't struggle with, right?
Yep.
And so as long as you're doing things like that, you're going to have a hard time getting people to believe you and trust you because it's such blatant hypocrisy. And you don't have to have a medical degree to see that some of this stuff just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think really quickly to kind of bring that around to the latest kind of little back and forth between President Biden and Governor DeSantis. Apparently, there was another retort, and President Biden said, "Governor who?"
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, which doesn't look good when people pretty much think you have Alzheimer's as it is. People think you're already, at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
But the thing is
They don't say that every 2 years come election time. They don't say that every
Right.
election, though.
But-
They're all about Florida come elections.
Well, but that's the thing, and so all of a sudden, Governor DeSantis, pushes back, and he says, "Well, look, until you do your job by securing the borders and stopping the influx of people," he's like, "I don't want to be lectured on COVID.
Yeah.
It's like, don't lecture me on COVID, because it's true." I mean, and the problem is that you don't see them criticizing New York. You don't see them criticizing California, who are also seeing surges in very similar numbers. But again, it's because he's the target. They know he's the 24 target. They can't go after Trump,
You just
right?
made me think of something.
They don't want to stoke the fire with Trump, but they know they can go after DeSantis because right now he's the face of 2024.
Right. So it's already so they have political objectives within their criticism, which I think a lot of just everyday folks don't realize that a lot of what you're seeing on the media is prepping you. I mean, they're actually laying the groundwork for the talking points that are going to be coming into your mailbox in about another 12 to 18 months. So you just reminded me of something, though. Remember in the beginning of COVID when like we knew that there was too much spread to stop it. Like we knew community spread had occurred. We knew that even though Trump closed the borders at the end of January with China, it was still too late. And New York was like, I mean, they didn't know what was, I mean, like they were in the throes of it, and they saw like, this thing turning into potentially
They were
like
drowning.
a black plague.
Sure,
I mean, like
yeah.
they were really fearful, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so, right? They were extremely concerned, and so was California. States that have massive populations and have high concentrations of people in certain cities. Those two governors were extremely concerned about COVID. They knew that they were going to be incapable of handling the entire situation on their own. They needed the military, they wanted the hospital ships, they needed and wanted everything they could get.
They wanted the federal government.
They wanted the federal government. And President Trump was like, whatever you need, right? And he was all about whatever you need, we will make it happen.
He even, literally, went out of his way to help California.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Went out of his way to help two states that never going to vote, didn't vote for him, never going to vote for him. But here's what you saw, though, in that small period of time. There was maybe a month, there was a moment there of like bipartisanship where everybody kind of set their differences aside and understood that this was a serious health crisis that was going to kill you regardless of your political affiliation.
Right.
And people set politics aside for a second. And the governors were about working with President Trump to just solve the problem. And as soon as people kind of got their head above water and could kind of see what was ahead, regardless of how it was going to go, good or bad, that's when all of it started. That's when they all started in on it, and it's never stopped since then. And I think that's the politicization of COVID has probably led to the deaths of people on both sides of the aisle, however you want to look at it. And unfortunately, I think it's eroded the public trust of public health officials, politicians, and maybe even some of their own, people that they deal with clinically, like their doctors.
But
and stuff like that.
that is
It's a
what
sad thing.
But that's what they get for making this as political as it has become, where you have situations where the health governments in New York City and New York State refused to release their data because they didn't want it to be used as a political fodder to get pummeled with Cuomo.
Well, they didn't want to have to acknowledge. Well, they didn't want to have to acknowledge all the nursing home deaths and all that.
But that's political. They did that on purpose because they thought they were riding high. Because again, people were talking about Cuomo running for the presidency when things were going the way they were going, and they loved the idea of Cuomo being able to hit back against Trump.
We were months into this pandemic, and he was already writing a book about it.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize, because a lot of people think, oh, that's Republicans trying to take him down. Something a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times when you have turmoil going on with a politician, a lot of times it's their own party.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that want your job, or there's people that feel like you're a competitor for the next job that they then want. And so New York is run by Democrats. Everybody around Cuomo is a Democrat.
Right.
The Republicans don't have to say anything about what's going on. In fact, I'm sure they would have already. It's the Democrats that were bringing down Cuomo.
Well, what's amazing to me is how self-destructive, he really has been in terms of his own political career. Between fixing the numbers regarding COVID cases, deaths, and then now with all the Me Too stuff, not to get down, off topic, but, this Me Too stuff is now, all these sexual harassment allegations and all that is also bringing down a ton of people, with him, including possibly even his brother. Not that, his brother had much journalistic credibility to begin with, but now they're saying that he may go down because he was helping his brother craft a lot of the messaging.
Yeah, sure, of course he was.
Yeah, so I think we'll get more into this when we get to that topic.
Right.
But I think what we're seeing now is that you're really starting to see that breakdown between red and blue states and how the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party is allowing themselves to be dictated by the way they're reacting to this all. So you have these. I could not understand the position that they're trying to find themselves in, that they're saying they're trying to mandate everything on everyone, but yet they don't want to be held accountable for those decisions. So they're allowing Lollapalooza had over 250,000 people attend. Their governors and leadership are going to restaurants in the middle of crackdowns in California. You have governors flying to Mexico for trips, and again, you have U.S. senators doing this.
You're forgetting a key element of COVID. The COVID virus is immune to Democratic approved outdoor events.
I agree.
If
yes.
it's a
That's
large
true.
event
That's
that
very
is
true.
sanctioned by the
Very
Democratic
true.
Party, COVID miraculously is not able to make it through. It's like
Sure.
a force field. It's like a
Right.
force field.
Is that
Yeah.
the same way
It's like
as
a
that
sphere.
COVID
It's like
is
a-
only like above 4 feet?
Yeah, like when you're
so
at a
when
restaurant,
you sit down at a
as long as you're
restaurant,
sitting down,
yes,
it's going
so
over.
at the moment, because we're sitting, COVID
COVID's
is
up here.
above. Yes,
COVID's up here.
right here. Can we get a wide angle, please?
It's not- it's
Can we
up
do
here.
It's here.
It's not here.
Or New York actually, if you're sitting in the restaurant, you can get COVID. But if you're sitting in a structure
Yes.
just outside the restaurant,
no COVID.
no COVID. Yeah,
way it works.
if
You
it's a
guys have
temporary,
science.
if it's a
It's
tent,
science,
yeah,
guys.
Science.
And it's settled.
I
by
don't
the
understand
way.
why we're still having this
Settled
conversation.
Science, settled science.
Because
Before-
air can't travel if we have a plastic thing right here.
That's right.
Like we should
If
start
I-
bringing those
If
on.
I put a plastic barrier here, it doesn't matter
Yes,
that this
correct.
is all open. As
Correct.
long as I have a barrier here. I want to mention something before I forget. Actually, Ron DeSantis does deserve a lot of credit for saving lives of seniors in Florida, and here's why. When Cuomo made the decision to send COVID positive individuals into nursing homes, I'm not saying that that makes sense, but what I can understand is where you have a city that has you have millions of people packed into a city, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got to put somebody somewhere. So where are you going to put them? Do you put COVID positive people in a hospital and then have the hospital be overrun? They had the ship. I don't know what they decided. I don't know what that got. Why that
Did
got screwed
nothing,
up.
right.
I don't know why they didn't
Did
use
nothing
that.
with it.
They
Yeah.
had the ship
They-
and they had their convention center that they just
Yeah,
converted.
they had these things open, and for some reason they thought that nursing homes, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for 1 second, that they thought somehow a skilled nursing facility would be capable of caring for people. Now, I can understand that rehabs and nursing centers are where they might have clinical capabilities to care for someone who's sick. But here's the problem. That's all the people that are there. It's not a COVID ward.
Right.
Everybody that's there is the most vulnerable to the
Correct.
virus. So you don't send an infected person into you would have been better off sending them to daycare centers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah. So you don't send a person who's infectious into an environment with other people who are highly, highly vulnerable. And we already knew early on that it was seniors
They were getting knocked out.
that were most at risk. We already knew that age was a predeterminate. Yeah. Okay. So he made a critical error. Now, he's a politician and he's got to make policy decisions, and he just happened to make the wrong policy decision.
Right.
Okay. Governor DeSantis is not a clinician, but he's an intelligent man, and he looked at the data, and I think it was clear to him, if this thing affects seniors, then everything we have to do has to be from a standpoint of protecting seniors, which means when the vaccine comes out, we front load seniors,
Right.
even if we think we need to front load healthcare workers, police, fire, and things like that, we front load the seniors because they're most likely to die. And he also didn't send infected people to nursing homes. In fact, nursing homes went on lock
yes.
right.
because we weren't allowed to go in them.
Yep.
We couldn't get our clients that may need something like that to go in a nursing home. And then what they ended up doing...
I'll never understand why New York chose to send infected seniors into
Right.
nursing homes.
And then what Florida did, which was the right decision, was they designated skilled nursing facilities and things like that as COVID positive locations where you could go. So what they did was they said, okay, we're going to keep COVID out of as many senior populations as possible by taking all sorts of precautions. But if you're COVID positive and you need care, we do have these locations that
Right.
can take you. And so that at least you kind of segregated the COVID positive so that the transmission of the disease was mitigated. And I think that Governor DeSantis made that decision because he's an intelligent guy who followed the science.
Right.
But at
And,
the
and
end
a lot of politicians don't do that.
But at the end of the day, if Cuomo, the governor, would have just said reverse course and said, "My bad, we have the data now." to
Yeah,
show,"
he could've changed
He
it,
could have
yeah.
changed it, and again, that would have been a show of leadership, not him capitulating to the pressure and allowing himself to be the all-knowing and not having the leadership skill of knowing when you're wrong. That's a huge leadership skill, and people die
it is.
because our leadership around the country refused to acknowledge it and wanted to just play politics.
I have to admit, one of the things that I appreciate from my time in the Army was it kind of driven into you that, you're constantly getting information on the ground. You need to listen to that information. And, in the absence of clear guidance, hey, take action, make the best decision you can. And as information comes in, it's not considered a failure to change course.
Correct.
In fact, it's viewed as wise, as leadership, as your job. And it seems like with politicians,
I mean, to bring it down to
public
its
health
simplest
officials,
form.
they're afraid to ever go back on themselves.
Well, and to break it down to its simplest form, that's exactly what you do in sports. You know what I mean? When you're in the middle of a game, especially if you're getting pounced, I mean, you look at what you're doing, and you got to change your strategy.
Right.
It's not working. Something you got
That's
to
what
change.
everybody's doing in the locker room at halftime.
That's right.
At halftime, at halftime, that's what every losing team is doing in the locker room.
And the thing is that Democrats realize that if they adopt the strategy and the mandates that
makes them look
now all of a sudden you look like you're turning your back because they politicized it, and they politicized it from day one.
And their voters would be livid if they. Well, actually, I don't know, because remember, do you remember like when Biden got elected?
I don't think people would care.
Later, don't you remember a week later, Cuomo was like, "Well, we got to open up. I mean, we got to be open for business. I mean, we can't remember that." And no one batted an eye. I'm like, "Are you serious?"
Everybody started opening up.
Because he was supposed to be the next president. They were so adamant
California,
of making
the same
him.
thing. They were like, "We got to open up," and I'm like,
so adamant about allowing him.
And their voters would have went with it. So So we're sitting here saying they can't change their minds. Actually, they can.
Yeah.
Because their voters are going to support whatever they do.
Well, now
and both parties are that way, I think. Actually,
Newsom is trying to leverage these mandates and these restrictions to soften the turnout
to keep himself elected
for the recall.
That's getting ugly.
So
real fast.
Wait, are you saying he's trying to suppress the vote?
Yeah.
Is that what you're
saying?
A
never.
white Democrat trying to suppress the vote?
He's trying to suppress the vote?
Never. I would never think something like that would ever happen with there. But again,
he's in trouble.
Now they're saying that he's underwater, so it's going to be very interesting to see.
Isn't he in trouble? He's not going to get beat by a Republican, but isn't he in trouble?
Oh, yeah.
If he doesn't win 51%,
I mean, he could still get recalled and then get replaced by
another. If you don't win 51%, you go ahead, right? I mean, they have to.
No, the recall. So it's on the same ballot. He's getting called. So if he beats the recall, the election doesn't matter.
Okay.
But if he loses the recall, and then I don't think he's allowed to be on the actual ballot, then that's why it makes it look so weird. So you're basically making the decision, yes, I want to recall him, and this is who I want to replace him with. Or, no, I don't want to recall him, but if I do have to recall him, then this is the person I want to replace him with. It's a very odd system, because it's going to happen all in one day.
All right.
I don't understand that. I feel like we're missing something.
Well, Joe, chews on that. Let's go ahead and bring back up tonight's topics. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Coming to you from our potential new digs, and a little bit more on that later on. But again, lots to talk about. With me tonight, Joe Wicker and Anibal David Cabrera.
We diverted fast on that first subject.
Oh, I know. We kind of because it touches so many other topics.
It does.
You know what I mean? All right. So one of the big policies that came out of this, and again, I think there's going to be a deconstruction of everything that's happened over the past 2 years, and what was legal, what wasn't legal. One of the things that I think is going to be very heavily looked at was this eviction mandate, or the anti-eviction mandate that was put into place during the Trump administration, and then it's been continued during the Biden administration. Really, I mean, I think past the clock. I think the clock had run out pretty much on the eviction moratorium, and it didn't look like the White House was going to ask for an extension or approve an extension,
right.
Signaling that Biden, may have been flip-flopping on.
Well, the courts had already said.
So
the court had already issued the court. Okay, first of all, when it got to the Supreme Court, there was only like a week or so left. It was already set to expire July 31st. So when Kavanaugh gave I think Kavanaugh wrote the opinion. It was literally one-page thing where he basically said, "Hey, look, I disagree with this. The CDC doesn't have the authority,
right?
And the other and 4 other justices agree that they don't have the authority.
Yeah.
But we're going to go ahead and we're not gonna cancel it now because it's already about to expire July 31st,
Right.
and we want to allow for an orderly return to it going away.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Supreme Court basically said it's really a moot point. So
Because
we're
they
just gonna
thought they were going to stick to the timeline.
exactly,
Yeah.
and now they've said, well, we're just
Well,
it was
they're playing Russian roulette with the Supreme Court.
It was
I
a
mean,
5-4
they're playing
decision.
chicken.
It was a 5-4 decision, and you are correct. The conservative justice Brett Kavanaugh said that he was only backing the ruling because of the upcoming expiration date. Kavanaugh warned that he believed the CDC had exceeded its legal authority in imposing the moratorium. So right now, and I think a lot of lobbyists are really talking about this, is because they feel that it was a slap in the face.
Those justices going to learn how politics will do you, man. Them politicians,
So the National Association of Realtors, and then there are about 3 or 4 other big lobbying firms, were the ones that were pushing for the extension not to be extended. And the fact that it is a huge surprise, because the Biden administration waited 3 days after the moratorium had finished to even make a comment about it, and they were playing going back and forth. So you had Pelosi blaming the White House and saying that she doesn't have the votes, and then you have the White House saying that it should be an act of Congress, and the CDC is like, oh, we already filed the report that we can do whatever we want. So like, you're giving an unelected agency with really no real powers the ability to stop hundreds of, probably the millions of dollars being earned by landlords. And again,
I think it's probably
I think we're in the billions. I think we're in the billions.
Well, if you're the Democratic Party, you're trying to figure out how you can make the impending evictions the fault of Republicans. And it's hard to do that when when you control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the Supreme Court's even letting it go for a while. And saying,
it's not sustainable. You have too many landlords out there. You have too many hedge funds. You have too many powers that be and money on the table for these people that again have been footing the bill. And there's been some restrictions that have come up where you've had to apply and prove that you somehow couldn't pay your mortgage. But I'll tell you what, part of the reason that we have the labor shortage is because, think about it, if you're making unemployment and you don't have to pay rent, I mean, again, you're talking about anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 in your pocket every month that you're not spending.
Right.
And again, this isn't sustainable. At some point, you got to pull that safety net, and it's going to be ugly when they do.
But they're not allowing it to be a gentle and calm, like kind of rolling effect. If they would have,
there's no way to do it. How do you determine?
There's no way for the government.
90 days ago, you tell the governors, like, look, this is going to end in 90 days. And again,
there was already a deadline.
But that's what I'm saying. They don't care the way they're acting. They have no care in the world, and the Democrats are going to get destroyed in the midterms because the National Association of Realtors, it's a 100-year-old organization, which I was very surprised with, and in the last 20 years have donated or contributed almost $1 billion. Well,
because they know
they
know the amount. They know the amount of evictions and unpaid mortgages that are going to come as a result of all this.
There's a lot more.
And there's again, even here in Tampa Bay, even though it's slowing up a little bit, there's a huge inventory shortage and ridiculous demand.
I'm concerned about that. It's only going to make it worse.
We're Tampa Bay.
You get evicted, and nobody can rent to you. What are you going to do?
Well, and that's the thing. Tampa Bay is actually nationally has seen, I think, among the highest increases in rent.
Yes, it is.
So you figure Florida, because of the real estate market the way it's been, it's probably across the board. I mean, if you were to really add up the entire state, we've probably had as a state the highest increases in rent.
Well, I asked on my Facebook page, I was like, I was asking basically, hey, landlords, like, what is going on? Are you guys just not getting rent? Like, is anybody paying your mortgage? Because what people don't understand is that a lot of landlords don't own their property outright. They have a mortgage too. Mm-hmm. I'm like, so how does this work? So they don't pay their rent, you don't pay your mortgage, the bank does what?
Yeah.
Is the bank foreclosing on you?
No, the bank.
At some point in time, someone's got...
So what were the responses that you're getting? Because I know what my clients are doing is that if they're in that situation where they don't have enough of the margin to be able to cover what their monthly is going to be when it comes to servicing the loan, is that it gets tacked onto the back of the note.
Yeah,
so that's what's happening. A lot of forbearance agreements, a lot of floating notes are occurring. So a lot of people are having to unlock their interest rates.
I think the biggest part of all this to kind of make this whole house of cards really collapse is going to be the inflation. Which is Anibal's favorite topic, but I think and I mean that in the lightest sense, which is the minute that interest rates go up, I think that's when things are going to get really ugly, because you're going to see a lot of these mortgages, again, that haven't been paid in maybe a year and a half. Now, like you said, even if they're putting that onto the back end of that deal, and as soon as those interest rates start to go up.
And guys can't refinance?
Yeah, but the majority of individuals have, after the blow up of about 10 years ago, a lot of mortgage companies and banks now have them at fixed.
Yeah,
There's very little
harder to get a mortgage.
Yeah, there are very little floating interest rates now. A lot of it's fixed, and so these things are locked in for 30 years. So it's not that it's going to be a big deal. What we're saying when it comes to
but you figure if they haven't been paying it, the interest on it is increasing.
Yeah, but it just gets tacked to the back of the loan.
Yeah, but that's
and I say that very flimsily.
Yeah,
it's not that big a deal, but it is a big deal.
It's not that there's no cost to that. There is a cost to you paying for the loan longer than what you had anticipated. But anyway, the other thing I was thinking of is on that Facebook post, people were commenting and saying, "Hey, it's not just universal. It doesn't apply to everybody. There's criteria." And one guy was breaking down these 5 or 6 things that you have to. One of those have to
requirements.
One of those have to be required. And some of them were pretty, specific. But it was, it's kind of like a lot of things, impacted by COVID or whatever. I'm like, well, some of them seemed like they were pretty broad, and that somebody could find a way to fit into one of those categories.
Right.
And I don't know. I just.
Well, then the question becomes: at what point does Biden basically, let the clock run out? Or is he waiting for the midterms to try to point the finger at Republicans?
If he waits another 90 days, we're going to be in October, November. So yeah, that might be a situation where do you really want people to get kicked out when they're going to Thanksgiving?
They need to do it now and not 2 months or 3 months or even 6 months prior to the election.
Yeah, anytime.
You don't want to do that.
Anytime is going to be a bad time.
Homeless people aren't usually going to vote to reelect. If someone has become homeless and you're on the ticket, you're probably not getting reelected by that person.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You don't want a massive amount of instability 6 months prior to you being on the ballot.
Hence why the midterms are looking more and more like it's going to be a bloodbath. Because again, if the Democrats polling itself is saying that they're already underwater by three to 6 points, then we all know tack on another 4 points.
Pelosi knows she's losing the House. They know that. They already know that. They know they're losing the House. They know they're probably going to lose the Senate. They know that.
Oh yeah, the realtors lobby.
Well, that's why they're trying to push this infrastructure bill.
They know.
They're basically pulling out all the stops to push this infrastructure bill
because this is it.
If not, it's going to be basically a 2-year lame duck on the front end and the back end.
Well, remember the original plan for the infrastructure was like $6 trillion.
Well, they were trying to
human and physical infrastructure, and now they had to just.
Democrats are. A lot of Democrats are
majority.
saying that.
I think we're now at 1.2 trillion when it comes to infrastructure, which is a little bit more of what I can deal with. And again, we're just talking.
But a lot of it's not even going to infrastructure.
No. A lot of the 1.2 is going to go into will go to infrastructure.
All right.
A lot of the other crap has already been knocked out, and I don't even know if they're going to.
There was a lot of help. There was stuff that was going to affect my industry. There was stuff for healthcare workers and they were saying it was like human infrastructure. I get it.
The human.
Hey, look, I like to help people, but yeah, it was crazy.
I just don't know how the argument of what is that?
Human infrastructure. It's just a word.
Daycare.
It's the new term. It's how politicians can change language. It's not daycare. It's not anybody paying for daycare. It's called human infrastructure.
They're going to start throwing housing under that and free education under that, and they're going to say, "Well, no, this is human infrastructure. Everybody needs to have a house. Everybody needs to have an education."
The moment you start hearing people start talking about you're going to throw grandma out of the house and everything else is when you're like, okay, you guys.
Remember that anti-Paul Ryan video? Remember that political ad that was against Paul Ryan and it had Paul Ryan wheeling the grandmother to the edge of the cliff
and then throwing her over.
Remember that?
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Your host, as always, Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and share. Thanks to everybody hanging out in the comments. Hector is doing a killer job in there. And we certainly appreciate everybody who's been watching. Also, make sure you subscribe to the audio version of our podcast. Phenomenal numbers there. We want to appreciate everybody listening to the audio version of our podcast, which you can get over the tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. So you can literally listen to this show anywhere in the world. For the video portion, make sure you check out YouTube and Facebook. Joining me today is Joe Wicker and Anibal David Cabrera. We were just talking about not only the Democrats' hypocrisy when it came to COVID and, of course, the eviction moratorium that continues to be pushed back. But we're going to kind of revisit something we touched on just a little bit ago, which is creepy Cuomo and the clock literally ticking on his political career as he has now been asked by the White House, by Nancy Pelosi, a lot of leaders, not only in the Democratic Party, but in the liberal movement, to resign. And it seems like he is going to fight this thing to the end. We were talking before the show how Fox News, literally while he's giving this speech, trying to explain away, all his indiscretions, they're literally running pictures of all the inappropriate touching and kissing and hugging, that Cuomo's done over the years.
It didn't stop Biden from getting elected. I mean, is Cuomo going to run for...
We're going to hit that in a second.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
If Cuomo's not running, he's already governor of New York. If he's not running for president, I'm not saying he shouldn't resign. I'm just saying if you're him, what's the point?
Sure.
So I say we do a quick poll.
You realize the presidential run's out of the picture.
Yeah,
already.
he's out of the picture. He's not going to be kicked out of office. I don't think the way the structure is with New York. I don't think he's going to get recalled or whatever.
So it is. So that is actually the way it is done in New York City, and there hasn't been a governor.
They recall like California.
No, it's not recalled. It's impeached. There hasn't been an impeached governor of New York City.
He's not going to get impeached.
FDR.
He knows where the bodies are buried.
Let's say this. We've already made this comment,
No.
but real quick. I say in the polls, in the comment section, I would say comment if you think he's going to resign or if he's going to get impeached. So the way
neither.
Or neither.
That'd be a good one. So the way New York City, and they actually did a really good breakdown of what this on the New York Times and the Huffington Post. Yes, I read them. I apologize. But the way that they talked about it is that there's only three real ways that this can go. He can run out the clock, which is very plausible, and that actually was thrown in there that if Cuomo says that he's not going to run for a fourth term, then they won't pursue him.
Of course they won't.
Another version of this is that he resigns from pressure, which if the president's telling you to resign and you don't balk on that one, that tells you how much influence the president of the United States has. And the third one is that the upper and lower house chambers in the New York can actually impeach him.
Won't happen.
And the way that they talked about it today on the news is that they actually have the numbers to impeach if they go forward in that direction.
He's going to tell people that he's not running for re-election, which means the issue's going to go away. The Democratic Party that controls the New York State Legislature and all the people around Cuomo have to come out, and the president and everybody, they all have to come out and say, we think you should resign.
Yes.
But, that's because they have to make that statement. But once he says he's not going to run again, they all know the problem's going to solve itself, and they are not going to impeach him, because if they do, they know that he knows where the bodies are buried, and then he'll start, coming after some of them. And they don't want to mess with the government.
We've already said this before.
They just want him to go away.
We've already said this before, that especially Democrats love to, when this moment, and it's going to be a feeding frenzy now, of who moves up where if the government goes.
Yeah, they want his job.
And that's the thing.
Because anybody that does have the clout to be governor of New York is going to pounce on this opportunity.
In a heartbeat.
Sure.
To come out and condemn him.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that are the loudest. Those are the loudest
right.
voices that you hear now. And when you see his longtime aide resign over the weekend, tells you that even the people in his inner circle are no longer supportive of his position.
But I think there's some validity to what Joe just said, which is that I think Cuomo's the type of guy who is so egocentric that he's going to let the clock run out.
and
he'll say whatever he needs to say to get them off his back. So he'll say he's not going to run for a fourth term, even though he probably will, because that's his only option at this point. And then hoping that people have forgotten about all of this come time for the election.
Well, I wonder if, because correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't his statement basically, hey, I'm a huggy, kissy kind of guy. Like,
Sure.
that's, what I do, And I'm just thinking, man, after the Me Too movement stuff hit, if you're running for office or in office and you're not stopping all that, then, you got it coming.
Right.
Like, why are you still hugging and kissing people?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Right, yeah.
That's not your spouse.
You can't even be kissing babies anymore.
No, COVID. No COVID.
So again,
It's back to kissing hands and shaking babies.
I normally completely agree with Joe Wicker. Not during COVID time. What are you talking about?
No, not during COVID.
But I'll say this. I will say that it's more likely that he does fall under the impeachment, and he resigns if the numbers are there. He's not going to want to be the first governor in almost 100 years to get impeached out of the governor's office.
Anibal,
and it's not like Democrats haven't done it before.
But even to what you were just saying about his top aide resigning, let's look at everybody else who he's taken down. He's just about gotten his brother fired. I don't think CNN's going to do it because he's really the only star.
He's the only one that makes the money.
Well, right. He's the only star they have left on that network. The other guys are all just
Don Lemon. He doesn't do anything. And that one round guy, I don't remember his name.
Stetler. Brian Stetler.
Well, here's the thing.
And this is coming from a very big guy.
He looks like Humpty Dumpty. It's just...
Well, yeah.
It's looking worse and worse. It's looking worse.
So here's the thing that maybe the viewers and a lot of people don't understand is that when President Trump was being impeached, and I'll go back to President Clinton, and when President Clinton was being impeached, all of the people within the political circles involved in politics, they all knew ahead of time that neither one of them would be convicted.
Right.
But it played out great for TV. It was good for ratings, and people make money off of it, and candidates get to campaign off of it.
Well, Clinton got impeached.
No,
No, he was not convicted.
In the Senate, he was not convicted.
I'm talking about convict. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
But but you're also giving it a barrier.
No,
if Trump knew that he wasn't going to get convicted in the Senate, then it doesn't matter. Same thing with Clinton.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying from the moment that articles of impeachment were filed against Clinton and against Trump, how many times? 2, 3 times, whatever it was.
Right.
From the moment those articles of impeachment were filed against both of those individuals, both of those presidents, the people within politics already knew because the votes weren't there.
Also, because you could still be president. You could still be president and be impeached at the same time.
Yeah, but
they allowed Clinton to stay in the office.
In regards to New York City, you cannot be impeached and governor at the same time.
I'm talking about being convicted of it. I'm not talking about articles of impeachment filed.
Right.
I'm talking about being convicted and removed from office.
But this is one difference: New York governorship compared to the
You're saying in
the
New
White
York
House.
you can't even be under impeachment proceedings.
Once the impeachment process has officially started and there's a vote, you cannot be governor.
Okay, well, here's my point. Then separate that out, then it's different. So they can't even start then. They won't even start then.
From what is being said, that's going to be filed.
They won't even start because then. Well, we can't get into all that because you're saying that someone could start the impeachment process. They couldn't be governor, but they could be acquitted, and then they would be out of office already. Like that doesn't make sense.
You can't be governor if you have been.
So
I think
the definition of impeachment in that regard is probably different than at the federal level. But my point is that when we talk about impeachment, people are acting like this might actually happen. Like Trump might actually get removed from office. Right. Like Clinton might actually get removed from office. And there's all sorts of people sitting at home watching, glued to the TV, thinking that the outcome is unknown. And all I'm saying is that everybody in politics already knows the outcome. It's not a surprise. This is not the Nixon days. This is not the Nixon days.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like redistricting.
I think it's different. I honestly think it's going to be different. And the reason why I say that is because you see it. You see the way it's running in the New York governorship and the New York politics. It is becoming a feeding frenzy within the governorship.
That's fine, but I don't think there's enough. I
think there's enough votes. I don't think there's enough votes.
No, I'm not even questioning that there's the votes. I'm questioning that they don't have the backbone to do it. Okay,
think they
it's
will.
one thing to come out and say and leak it out to the press. Oh, we got the votes. We got the votes to get rid of them. But I don't think they'd literally have the backbone to do it. Not to the Cuomo family.
Just
he's just gonna say, guys, I'm not running for re-election, and the issue's gonna solve itself.
I don't
the Democrats
think
have no reason to take.
it doesn't solve itself when they're filing criminal proceedings.
Then let that play out. But that's good for the Democrats then, because then they get to be hands off.
Or they'll
They
wait.
didn't have to,
Or they'll wait. Right? They'll still wait for the criminal proceedings.
Yeah. If the FBI shows up and carts the guy away, then the Democrats are like, oh well. I mean, I guess he's out. You know,
Right.
I guess we'll have an election.
The right thing would be to get rid of him before all of that happens.
Yes,
but they're
of
not.
course.
There's no willpower to do
There
that.
are 11 cases currently with sexual harassment when it comes to the governor, and the most recent one is
he
an
has
aide.
Trump had 16. Beat that.
Yeah, but
Trump had 16.
But that was
So
before he
Cuomo's
became.
got work
But
to
that
do.
was before he became president. This is all with inside the governor's mansion. That's where the difference really does
Well,
lie
actually,
in this
Trump's
situation.
were amazing because all 16 of them dropped in like a 30-day period. It's like, wow, dude.
Right.
Like,
Miraculously,
Also-
right after the election.
miraculously, yeah. In
Also-
October of 2015.
The blowback of those
2016.
people that are getting fired or getting lectured to because of the report that was issued by the Attorney General's office is spectacular.
Right.
The Human Rights Coalition is being under investigation for their handling of what's going on. The woman that was running the Me Too, the Time's Up movement has
Yeah, Time's Up.
resigned
Yep.
because of her close interactions with the governor
That's
during
the name of
the
the
crisis.
organization.
She was covering for him.
She was.
They were helping him.
They were helping him.
messaging.
Yeah.
They
You
were
know,
helping him.
So
They were
there's-
helping him do it.
So there's plenty of,
So
like-
he had Me Too problems, and he went to the Me Too organizations, and we're like, y'all need to help your boy out.
Right. Yeah.
And they were like, we got you.
So
Here's some
yeah.
talking
So
points. Here's
besides
some talking points.
So besides the anchor on CNN, like writing up the press release to be given out for his brother, he also had additional Democrats, and this just shows the hypocrisy of all those organizations.
Yeah, exactly.
And how they really don't
It's like
care about what's going
BLM
on.
and
It's all bullcrap.
It's like
giving-
BLM and again, this Time's Up and the anti-war movement, and these are just arms of the left.
It's like
Yeah.
giving
It's
Hillary
their-
Clinton the questions to the interview or to the debate beforehand.
Right.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you know.
They're just playing along.
That's just
I mean,
par for the
it's
course,
just-
yeah.
Right, exactly. So
Again, more heads should roll. As I honestly believe more heads should roll.
You know, they get out of their meetings and then Cuomo's like in the back room or whatever, and people are like, hey, sorry, man, you know, we gotta do what we gotta do
Right.
and everything. But
Sure.
you'll be all right, man. Don't worry about it. Hey, you guys gonna hit some rounds next weekend? All right, we'll see you there. You know, they're not.
you're absolutely right, though. I mean,
not.
that's how it is.
Again, and we see this all the time. So when people say that there's really no Democrat Republican side of these organizations, oh no, from the ACLU all the way down to these other like human rights organizations, they are so far left, and they will only protect their left organization leadership and their political junkies when it comes to the Democrat Party. It's disgusting to see how willing they were. I mean, has anyone even talked about the Clinton Foundation? No one talks about the Clinton Foundation and all the money that went to Haiti, and we're seeing complete stupidity when it comes to how much money.
Well, the money that vanished.
but-
That was
all the money that vanished.
Because she's not running for office.
Right.
So everybody just kind of moves on.
Well, you know, and not to go off on a tangent about the Clintons, but I was watching a new to Netflix, but it's a documentary from 2012 about David Geffen. You know, big everything, Hollywood, movies, television,
Yep.
music industry, huge mogul. And he was super close with the Clintons from the time that Bill was governor of Arkansas. Like he was on the Clinton train, and when it came time to the "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy, he had promised him that he wasn't going to be in favor of it. Lied to him, and from that moment on, you know, basically called him out. And he came out publicly when Obama put himself up as a candidate and said the Clintons cannot be trusted. And he was one of the major voices in Hollywood that went against the Clintons and turned the tide for Obama.
Really?
Now,
Yeah.
and now we want to say this publicly.
That's a little
We
bit
have-
of history right there. I didn't
Super
know
interesting.
about
Guy's
that.
brilliant. Guy's a genius.
We don't have any
Because
additional
Bill Clinton
information on the
took
Clinton
this
Foundation.
centrist approach in that.
We
All
have
right.
no additional
Yeah,
information.
for the
on that.
record, yeah, we don't know.
We don't know where the bodies are. We don't know
any
where the money
Clintons.
went. Nope. Just
So
We
far,
wish-
we're
we
close
wish
to running on time. So
Conjecture.
We wish Hillary
All
Clinton well. Yeah,
conjecture.
we wish her well.
I
whatever
don't.
she's doing.
However,
let's get back on track.
Alava.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host. Thank you so much for watching. We've got, we've got a few more topics here. No, I'm sorry, 2 more topics, is it? Let me see. I'm waiting for them to come up. So this one, again, we're going to kind of bring this topic, even though it's a national one, we're going to bring it here down to the local level, which is the mask mandates. As Governor DeSantis has discussed time and time again, he has stated quite plainly, quite clearly, that he will not tolerate any mandates of any kind, whether it's schools, whether it's restaurants, whether it's you name it. And so, these are starting to come down. School starts here in Hillsborough County, starts tomorrow. And sure enough, as expected, we're seeing that some of these school districts are finding little workarounds. And so there was obviously some question as to the funding of the schools, because there was a rumor going around saying that DeSantis would actually withhold funding for some of these schools. Now there's been some clarification saying that he would actually hold the funding of the superintendent and school board member salaries if the mask mandates were put in place. So some clarification there. But again, I mean, I don't understand, especially those coming from the left, who for years have championed the personal choice banner under healthcare decisions, have now taken the flip side of the argument, in regards to this COVID pandemic, and are the ones demanding that there be mandates, demanding that there be masks in place. I mean, again, are we going to see? I don't think we'll see it here in Florida. I mean, do you think we're going to see it in other states where they're going to kind of rewind the clock, go back to lockdowns, go back to these mask mandates? I mean, I think we're seeing it in some states already.
In our county, they said they have a mask mandate, but you can opt out, which basically means we don't have a mask mandate. You have the option of wearing a mask, but politicians want to call it a mandate because that makes them feel like they're in charge.
I don't think it's considered an oxymoron, but I would say that it kind of feels like an oxymoron.
A mandate that's
optional. You're saying it's a mandate that's optional.
Optional mandate.
And then you're saying that it just needs, and then, the paperwork is digital, so it can be digitally filled out, which is another funny portion of this, that you're going to have a lot of tech kids.
So you got a bunch of 16-year-olds like... You got a bunch of high school kids that are opting out on behalf of their parents.
I think also teachers and administrators also have the option to wear them or not, which is causing even more confusion, because you're going to have teachers that have been vaccinated then have to wear a mask.
They don't have to.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. But you're going to have a classroom full of children that have masks, but the teacher not have a mask on. It makes it to a point to where, like, how are you as an educator supposed to push that?
But the kids aren't.
The kids are going to.
No, they're not. Because as soon as a kid... No.
Yes, they will.
Here's why. Because as soon as the kids find out, and they're going to find out in, already, that it's actually not a mandate and that it is optional, those masks are coming off, man. Them kids aren't about that. They're gonna and who's going to hold them accountable?
They're going
to send a letter home to
You're going to suspend them for not wearing a mask. I mean, the craziness is going to go absurd.
So then what are they going to do? Oh, well, we didn't receive this from you. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they really going to track down these kids and their parents?
Yes, they're Democrats. They're Democrats. They love the bureaucracy of all of this has created. And because of it, they're going to go even further and what? The day before, 2 days before you make this announcement, which could have been made weeks ago.
The masks are, as far as the kids go, the masks are going to be gone. You'll have some kids that will honor their parents' wishes. You'll have some kids that they themselves, want to, or there'll be peer pressure around.
There'll be a lot of peer pressure.
And they'll feel like, but
I think it's going to be peer pressure on both sides. You're going to have teachers that are going to peer pressure their students to wear the mask, and you're going to have kids that are going to be peer pressuring their own peers not to wear the mask. Again, this causes so much more of an anxiety trap for these kids, these parents, these teachers, that it makes no sense. But you're wasting all of this time when we should be just focusing on educating these kids.
And quite frankly, if you have a room of, say, 25 people, and 5 people are wearing masks, it's kind of like, what's the point?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because they've already said the 6-foot rule's nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it had to be. It might as well be 60 feet.
Yeah. You're in the same room. You're sharing the same air. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you would literally have to be wearing a hazmat suit for you to be adequately protected.
You would have to have an
room
N95.
like that.
Yeah. You
And
would have to have
everyone
an N95.
that is in the medical industry knows that the way that we are dealing with masks make absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
The number, if you're a nurse or you're working in a hospital, you know that you're putting on and off a new mask every single time you walk into a room with a different patient. Which means you're going through maybe 20, 30, 40 masks a day. And we're not doing any of that.
A different purpose where it's more about the bacteria that's coming out of your mouth, really, than it is,
But also viruses enter our bodies through openings in the body, right?
Sure.
So I mean, basically your eyes, nose, mouth.
Exactly.
So basically, and so wearing even if you're wearing an N95, first of all, that would indicate that you believe that you're in a contagious environment, which if so, you should leave. But if you're wearing an N95, but you don't.
Well, and if someone without a mask is talking to me,
over,
I mean, I can absorb it through my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. So my point is that the N95 is an indicator that you believe you're in an infectious environment, which if you were, you would be wearing you would be donning all of the PPE necessary, which you're not. So
it goes back to
it makes people feel good. So
right, exactly. It goes back to the old Fight Club. It goes back to the old Fight Club. It's the illusion of safety, right?
Yeah.
When they make you when you're in an airplane and they make you inhale oxygen from the oxygen mask, it's not because that oxygen's there to protect you. It's there to calm you down. Because a crash is going to be imminent regardless. And so I mean,
honestly,
it's not always going to end up in your. I mean, sometimes they might, some.
Well, you only get like 15. You only get like 15 minutes of air on those things, anyways.
Right, but again, does it actually prevent you from dying? Does it do anything for your safety? No, it doesn't. Does crouching behind the seat in front of you do anything to protect you from dying? No, it doesn't. It's all the illusion of safety. And so with these masks, as you said, I mean, my daughter starts kindergarten.
Does anybody else feel like they want to get on a plane right now?
My daughter starts kindergarten tomorrow.
Johnny loves
You're all going to die.
And they have these little pods
looking straight at the camera.
Yeah. Why even fly? You're all going to die.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Just road trip it. It doesn't matter. Are there trains? Are we focusing that now?
No, Johnny just reminded us that everything we're doing in the airport is for naught. Like
well, the TSA really is kabuki theater. Honestly, that's all.
They are, and at the airport is its whole comedy skit. But you and one of the guys, Justin, who was watching. I don't know if he's still watching. He's a pilot, so. But you social distance in line at the airport to get through security or to get through the baggage drop point, and then as soon as you get on your plane, it's back to get close to your buddy, love your neighbor type stuff.
Right.
And every's packed in there, and it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, they were doing this. They were doing this 6-foot rule, where you literally one plane was taking the entire terminal, to load one plane.
Yeah,
and then
as soon as you get on, you're completely jam packed. It's just like,
wait, you guys don't buy the middle seat? I don't understand.
Now let me tell you, like the school district was very clever.
You're a middle seat guy, I'm sure.
No, we buy the middle seat, so then the wife and I have space. Okay. I'm a big guy, and so it's a big guy problem, but I always buy the middle seat.
I don't blame you. I mean, for those that can afford it.
Hey, man, shoot ya. Everybody wants the middle seat open.
I apologize.
Everybody wants the middle seat open.
I just thought that was very.
I remember the days when I could sleep on the 3 seats. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh, that was years ago. Johnny.
Yeah, that was way too long ago.
But just in case anybody needs to know this, proper etiquette on an airplane is you let the middle seat passenger have both armrests.
Huh.
If you're
right, because you've got the outside.
If you're in the aisle, you get to lean a little bit.
Right.
You got a little leg room, right? If you're at the window, you got the window seat.
Right.
You get to lean over. Okay. The guy in the middle, it sucks to be in the middle. They get both armrests. That's proper. That's proper airplane.
Is this a different podcast?
I know.
we have transferred over to a new
podcast. We were on time.
I'll say this. Just like the school board of Pass got destroyed on the last election, this is going to cause parents to remember
You think so?
What happened. Yeah, I called it last time. The actions of the school board were felt during the election.
What do parents want? I mean, they make it sound like it's kind of even, or that it's more about, more.
But this is
parents
what I was
want
going to
masking.
say.
What do the parents really want?
This option, this opt-out system,
Well, that's going to show us.
was maybe the most clever thing they could have come up with, right?
Oh, sure.
Because for those parents
have no liability.
that are panicking about the coronavirus,
You can wear your
and
mask
it's
and
like,
you can do
hey,
whatever.
if that makes you feel better, hey,
You can
go
do
right
whatever
ahead
you
and wear
want,
it.
yeah.
And if you don't want your kid to wear the mask, then
But
you
see,
opt
they're
out
not
of
going to
it.
like that because they're mad that that they're doing something and you're not.
This is
because
just
what
gonna-
they're really
Yeah.
upset
But they're-
about
but they're also
is that
absolving
you're not
themselves-
obeying.
but
That's
they're
what they're
absolve-
upset. They want you to obey.
They're absolving themselves of legal liability as well.
Sure. Well, yeah.
By
Yeah,
giving
I
parents
guess.
that option.
Is
The
it like
government's not
is
liable.
it
The
mandatory
government's not
reading as
liable
a
for
Democrat to read 1984? I don't understand. Like you see it on every policy that they're making.
Animal Farm
That they're-
used to be required. Is
I
Animal Farm
love
still required?
Animal
Is
Farm.
Probably
Animal
not.
Farm still
No,
required?
I doubt it.
Because
they're
that
making
was
fun of
required-
animals, so I doubt that's.
Well, that was required reading
Right.
in middle or high school.
Middle school, I
but it was
remember.
pretty early on.
Well, I
think it was
remember
middle
watching
school.
the cartoon. I remember watching.
Yeah, I love that
that was a good
cartoon.
movie. Yeah. Very good one.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
I
with
think
that.
we did the book, and then they did the movie or
Right,
something.
right.
Yeah.
But again, Democrats are the only party now that is purposely asking for your papers. And like every single event that's happening, they want to see your papers to get into the airport. They want to see your papers to be able to go to the
Except to
restaurant.
vote.
But they don't want papers to go
No.
to go vote.
Not if you're going to vote.
No.
No.
If you're brown and you want to vote, you don't have to show papers.
To me, the documentary I'm dying to see is how the liberals, the hippie movement of the 70s, which was very anti-government, very much like leave me alone, let us live our lives, stay out of our way.
Yeah.
Basically did a complete 180
did. Yeah, they
in a
did.
matter of 30 to 40 years, and have become the truly fascist party that we see today.
Yeah.
Well, you know what happened is that some of those hippies of the 60s became CEOs of today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in reality, those people that were, when they were throwing off government, like that's very American, right? Like
Yeah.
small government, leave me alone, don't push,
Don't talk to me.
don't push
Yeah.
morality on me or whatever. I mean, that's kind of pretty American. But what they were really doing was they were pushing back on morality.
Oh, sure.
See, if you think about it, back then, like they'd call out the state police if you
Right, 'cause it
gyrated
was-
your hips at a kind
Yeah,
of
sure.
You know,
It was
I mean,
sex, it was drugs,
Yeah, the
it
doors
was-
put
Rock
on a
and
concert,
roll.
and they would call the cops or whatever, and you'd get arrested.
Yes, we've all seen the movie Footloose.
So
It's
that
just
was
here in Tampa.
that was when the government was still kind of
But for real.
really like enforcing a lot of morality. Like you had
Yeah.
these moral laws almost, right?
Right.
And so really what the kids of the 60s were pushing back on was morality. Well, those people became CEOs of banks.
Right.
And insurance
And
companies.
politicians
And politicians. And
yeah.
now people wonder, why are they doing what they're doing? Well, because this is who they were back then too.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, so thank you for watching The Yard Sign. Again, chock full of topics today, but nonetheless, we're going to close out today's show with our favorite kind of go roundabout the part of the show where we all talk about the one story we didn't get to on today's show. Being that there's three of us, it's going to be a short list, hopefully. So let's go ahead and start at. Let me see how much time are we in here?
Mine can be very quick.
Okay.
You don't have to time it.
Joe's up first. Here we go.
I'm watching. I forget what it's called, like RL95 or whatever crap name they give to them or whatever. But I'm watching a couple of storms that are out in the Atlantic or whatever, just because I get these updates or whatever. And every time that email pops up, I'm like, oh, please no, I don't want to have to, activate the emergency management policy and all, whatever
Yeah.
we have to go through. So I'm just watching that, but so far it looks okay. But we're still not out of the water yet for hurricane season. So a couple storms that are out there.
Only about
Let's hope-
about
let's
30,
hope
45
nothing-
days left?
Let's hope. I think it's through November, right?
Yeah, mid-November.
Is
Basically
it November?
through
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So hopefully we get through this without another one of those.
Right. Anibal,
Huh.
what
Yes.
story did we miss?
Really, I was more concerned about what happened over the weekend, which was the closing ceremonies of the Olympics. And I was very happy to see that the U.S. pulled it out at the end, for crying out loud.
On medal count
And
and
medal,
gold, right?
The medal count, we were good for a very long time.
and gold,
It
right?
was the gold count that I was concerned about, that we were going to be playing second fiddle to China. And honestly, if we're second fiddle to China, just stay there. Like, don't even come back. I got super upset. And again, and you know what? This is, I think, the first time in the Olympics history that the U.S. team more female competitors and athletes won more medals than men. So I'm go there for team girls, and I think that was really cool for that situation to occur. I think a lot of other additional. Someone has their sound off.
Yeah,
That was my timer. You see how much time I had left?
Oh, this whole time
I yield back my time
you
to the
have
gentleman,
way too much time.
to the gentleman
Joe.
from West Tampa.
What? Yeah, that's true. And so I think that's what I was looking forward to, and I'm pretty happy for it. Also, the cauldron of fire that the Japanese have is exactly what you would think the Japanese would do. It turns into like a spaceship and like flies away. It's really cool. I liked it.
Have they ever been to the moon?
No.
No, they haven't.
No.
Can keep dreaming.
Well, but I think
Been
we
there,
also
done that,
saw
got
the
the
emergence of a
t-shirt.
lot of new sports that allowed for more women to compete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Wait. Break that down.
Well, no, you saw
What sport was added on that just focused on women?
No, not just women. I'm saying that it opened up the opportunities for men and women. But what I'm saying is that opened up the opportunity for more women to be able to compete in more sports, not
So
exclusively.
wouldn't that also add additional men to that sport as well?
Well, yeah, but it didn't. It doesn't guarantee an outcome. Again,
What sport in the Olympics is just for men?
what sport is just for men?
Yeah.
Baseball.
There's a softball version of that for women.
Okay. I mean, there's sports out there that are just for men. I
That's a good
mean,
point. Are there? I'm not sure what they are.
I'm just saying that in terms of performance, we came out ahead in stuff like the BMX bikes. I know you are. I see you over there.
But
Because the BMM sports doesn't have a women's version of it?
No,
softball
but-
wouldn't be the female version of baseball.
It is
right?
the female version of
Okay,
baseball.
no, softball.
Are you telling me that
Yes,
there are
baseball
women?
is
There's
baseball.
an official women's league of baseball that is not.
Yeah, but there's
I don't
also
know.
the same
I don't
version.
but there
know. Is
are
there?
women's
Is
sports
there?
synchronized swimming. There's no men's synchronized swimming.
Yeah, but there's a mix.
No, there isn't.
No, I
Yes,
don't
there
think
is.
there
There
is.
is mixed.
Is there?
Yes.
I don't think
Now
so.
there
But
is.
still, you don't have a
No.
whole team of guys
I
out
think-
there,
yeah.
dancing
No,
to
yeah.
Uptown Funk.
but that's been
pool.
in the Olympics for like 10 cycles now.
Yeah.
I know,
I
but what
actually watched the synchronized swimming. It's called.
Isn't it legit?
It's called aerobatics, or it's called.
They've changed the name,
Artistic
yeah.
swimming.
Yeah,
Artistic
they've
swimming.
changed.
I think
the
it's
name.
called artistic swimming because
Yeah.
my wife and I watched it last night on replay.
My point
really cool.
being was it wasn't so much about the gender as the fact that we are traditionally so dominant in so many sports, but the introduction of new sports kind of leveled the playing field, because again, we saw this 3-on-3 basketball, which the men were terrible at, the women were great
They were
at,
amazing at.
and so we saw the introduction of surfing as a sport. Again,
Right.
the men and the women won medals
There
there.
is a-
the
there is-
BMX biking,
There is
BMX
an
biking
event
was
that is there is an event that's more than co-ed. I think it's like there is no recognition of male and female, and that was the other one I was watching last night, which is equestrian,
right.
because the horse is the athlete. Really? Right?
Oh yeah,
the horse is
right.
the athlete.
Yeah, it's not men's or women's.
That's right. Because
Yeah.
I was asking, I was like, well, is this the women's event or the men's event? And because the United States had I think
Well,
like
let's
two
check.
women had two women and a man, I think, or whatever. Anyway, because the horse is the athlete, it's not divvied out by the sexes.
Let's check in on
But
Mr. Ed.
The one disappointing thing that I saw, unfortunately, was that because I shot competitively in high school and in college, was that the Chinese female, for the women's sport, the Chinese female beat out the American female in shooting.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought we'd won the gold in that.
Yeah. Well, we
Or were
won-
there multiple events?
Well, the male,
There are multiple.
the men. Well, it came down to the United States and China both times.
Yeah.
And the man won for men. And there's multiple shooting events, but anyway, the man.
Is dueling one of them?
The American won. The American won the men's,
called fencing.
and the Chinese won the females, and then I think America won the team event,
Okay.
perhaps.
I was very confused about the shit because there's like 20 medals in that one.
There's different.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
of
there's
them.
Well, I
different
love the
types or
one
whatever,
meme. I love the one meme that really got around about the shooting event,
Yeah.
which was the girl
Why does
shooting
China-
single-handedly.
Yeah,
shooting this huge gun single-handed.
Yeah, people
and
are-
and you had some guy criticizing her for
Yeah.
shooting it that way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, she kind of just won an Olympic medal.
Yeah,
you know?
because people don't understand when you look when you see the rifles and the pistols for competitive shooting. What people don't understand is they're like they're made for competitive shooting. They're not made. They're actually designed for pure accuracy. They're not designed for
combat or self-defense.
So they look really funky, and they're like all adjustable and everything.
Oh, they have like face masks on
you
side.
Cover
it's
cover,
very interesting.
Some shooters like to cover the one eye so they can keep both eyes open, but they're only looking through the one, so you're not squinting.
Right.
So they do all sorts of different things to customize themselves and wear leather jackets and coats, and they're all like, it's.
Yeah.
So
I'm more complicated than you can imagine.
It's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic. But again, at the end of the day, what I'm looking forward to this week is being told where are my papers when it comes to being having the vaccine or not. So I'm excited.
I think if this keeps up,
twirling. I want to see Anibal doing that event where you twirl the baton with the streamer on it. You know that one?
Oh, you're
where they have the
rhythmic gymnastics. That's rhythmic gymnastics.
I want to wear a onesie
where you like
that has sparkles.
Oh, you had me a onesie. So
one ticket already sold.
That's right. To wrap this up again, so for me, I would say, as I mentioned last week, so I finally actually binge watched Cocaine Cowboys, Kings of Miami, and despite Billy Corbin's politics, who is he's very liberal, he did the original Cocaine Cowboys. He did ESPN's 30 for 30 about the U and the U Part 2. Not bad. I mean, I mean, the quality of the documentary was okay, but the story is unbelievable. It's one of the largest narcotics cases in the country. These guys were literally...
Did it involve cowboys?
Well, no. So the whole reason
I'm just curious. I didn't know. I didn't know if there was a connection between like Texas and Miami, and they were using like legit cowboys. Like
no. So the whole name about the Cocaine Cowboys was because the smugglers who used to fly the planes would actually dress up in cowboy gear. They would wear cowboy boots and big belt buckles and cowboy hats, and and these were the smugglers that were running these planes from Latin America, into the United States.
Okay.
And that's how they got the name Cocaine Cowboys. Because if you ever went to any of these little municipal airports, and they happened to be there, fueling up, hanging out, whatever. I mean, they were dressed. They looked like cowboys,
and they felt like it was an outfit that somehow was like. Took your attention off of it? Like,
no,
obviously it's very noticeable.
No, it was actually more of an inclusionary thing. It was like, because all of a sudden you were part of that group. You were part of that. Like, they knew because you're wearing cowboy boots, but you're also wearing like a $20,000 Rolex, and you're also wearing, you know what I mean? You're wearing gold chains.
It was their uniform.
Exactly. It was their uniform.
Cool.
And so, Anibal, obviously very, very intrigued.
Yes.
The other thing I would also want to have people look into is a fascinating fact that I came across listening to Joe Rogan podcast. But it's a fun rabbit hole to go down if you want to look at the ESG scores that companies are now working towards. And ESG standing for environmental, social, I think it's governance. Yeah, so environmental, social governance, and basically, it's based on the company's investment in the environment, carbon credits, all that nonsense, and also how they treat social issues, BLM, LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff, and how hedge funds, investors are now looking at these ESG scores to determine which companies they want to invest in, and so it's one of these kind of crazy underground kind of things that's happening, and it's just starting to surface.
Only big businesses had time for that crap. Like, who has the money to like pay to have a person? That's a $100K job where a person sits in an office and just like figures out how you can be like more inclusive, whatever the heck.
Well, that's the thing. They call it community affairs, or they'll call it, they have some nondescript name for it. A community involvement, community engagement. They all have it. And the Bucks have it. The Lightning,
and they're only allowed to hire a non-cisgendered female from some form of oppressed zone.
Well, but they also determine like where do all their nonprofit funds go, right?
Yeah.
And how
I feel
do they
like that actually ruins a lot of. I bet you there's a lot of companies that used to give a lot of money to different causes, and they've had to back up and say forget it because they don't want to get cornered, and it's like,
Sure.
oh, you gave to a pro-life group, or oh, you
Yeah.
gave to this. So they just pull back and say, you know what, screw it.
but that's
We're not
happened.
gonna-
That's absolutely happened.
We're not
Oh,
going to
yeah,
give any
Publix,
money.
because
That's
it's
happened to
politicized.
Publix.
We're just
yeah.
going to take our money and we're going to do something else.
Yeah,
with it. We're
now
not gonna-
every
Yeah.
well to go to what Anibal said. Now every cycle, it's become who is Publix donated to, and
Yeah,
they start
yeah.
to and so Publix
Exactly.
all of a sudden is under the gun, because they donated to this group and that group or this candidate and that candidate. Remember how much flack they got for supporting Adam Putnam
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
governor.
Well, even last year when they gave to the governor's re-election campaign, and then like 3 months later, the governor rolls out the vaccines in Publix supermarkets.
Yeah, and they tried
then
to
people
say-
try to say, "Oh, it's a connection backward." No, it's
yeah,
not.
they tried to say it was a
You have
hookup.
no idea what
It's
you're
like-
talking about.
It's like, dude, I mean, so are you saying you don't want Publix to be able to carry it because there's no other chain store in Florida with as much reach? Like, why would you not want that?
Democrats do not care
Same thing with
about
I think
poor people.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I think Walgreens and CVS was first,
Yes, they were.
and then maybe Walmart, and then Publix or something like that.
Again,
like, Publix
this
wasn't even number
this
one.
election cycle and this whole pandemic has really shown the Democratic Party is a bunch of let me eat my cake. That's all you're seeing all around, from Chicago to California to New York, even in parts of Tampa. That it's only the elites, Democrats, that
Right.
they know what's best for
Yeah,
you.
and
and
it's
they
only
know what's
okay
going
for
on.
them to do
Yes.
it. Nobody else can do it.
And again, I'll go back to it with the party in Martha's Vineyard. The reason why they thought they were allowed to get away with it is because the majority of people that are being invited are very intellectual Democrats that were obviously already with the vaccine.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they didn't have to worry about it. And the people that were at that party, 200 plus people were at that party. And these are like movers and shakers of big industries, not wearing masks. They don't give a damn about what's going on because it's Martha's Vineyard. And as long as you have the money, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Obama was getting ready to have this huge party, and I think it only got canceled because
No, it didn't
of
get canceled.
it got
Scaled
scaled
down.
back. Did it really get scaled back due to COVID, or did it get scaled back because it became public?
I think they just
because
trimmed
it
out.
public.
Well, but I just think they trimmed out the politicians.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they could save face.
So the politicians didn't
and
have to deal
So
with
the
it.
politicians
Yeah,
didn't have to deal with the blowback and all the
Yeah.
celebrities and all that were
John Legend, his wife, Alicia Keys. Allegedly, Eric Holder was there. Dwan Wade was there. Bradley Cooper was there. Steven Spielberg. Cobain was
I
there.
thought it was just
Crazy.
family. Well, now I thought they said they scaled it back
No,
to family,
no,
so they
no,
really
no.
didn't scale
Yeah.
it. So they said they scaled it back, but they
trimmed all the
they
politicians
went from
out.
700 to 500.
It
Yeah,
was
pretty
a
much.
bunch of
Last thing-
of one percenters.
Last thing
Yeah.
I want to say about Obama's house on Martha's Vineyard is that
On the water?
on the water is
Yeah.
that when people talk about all this, global warming and ice melting and all this, it's like, guys, do you think that President Obama spent $11 million for a waterfront
We've talked
property?
about this.
Have we? Okay.
Yeah.
For a waterfront property, if he really believed there was a threat. And,
Yeah.
and lastly, I'm assuming he paid cash. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. Maybe he has a mortgage. But do you really think that banks would loan money to people to buy waterfront property if they thought that in the next 5 or 10 years, as
Yeah.
AOC
Yep.
says, it's going to be underwater?
Yep.
No.
Right.
They're still building in Miami.
Yeah. And they're still insuring
They're
properties on the
still
water.
insuring it. You can still get insurance.
I mean, you can't get hurricane
I
insurance.
was
but,
about to say hurricane insurance.
Well, everything
uh,
in Miami is Cat 5.
right.
I mean, right?
No, but seriously,
Everything's
unless
Cat
you have
5.
a-
Like,
unless you have a
people's
pool.
doghouse is like to code, like Cat
Right.
5 doghouse.
There's a lot of things in Miami that are not up to code.
Let's not even get started on
not
that. All
gonna
right.
go there.
Thank you again, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Thank you again to Anibal David Cabrera, Joe Wicker, for joining me today. Again, we'd love to hear from you in regards to what topics we should be discussing on the show. You can leave it here in the comments or shoot us a message on any of our social media accounts. Don't forget, you can find the video version of this show on Facebook and YouTube, and you can also get the audio version of this show over at the Tech Overlords for the time being at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. On behalf of my friends over here, I'm Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next Monday. Have a great night, everybody.